you know, a situation that we find ourselves in right now with this COVID-19, in my mind, it's like all of the stuff we've all been doing for many, many years, some of us together, all of the workshops we've been doing and the personal growth we've been doing. And, you know, you all have different practices that you've been engaged with, whether that's yoga or meditation or your faiths that you're a part of, your religions that you're a part of. It's kind of like all of a sudden, all of that that we have in us is being called forth in a massive way. It's kind of like we're in a spiritual boot camp right now, where it's like, are we really going to lean in now to all of the resources we've been cultivating together, many of us, for these many years? Here's the moment. You've heard this term in the yoga circles. There's a term called yoga off the mat, right? It means the yoga we practice when we're not in the yoga room, when we're not doing our particular posture, and when we're actually out in the world, we're out in the grocery store, we're interfacing in life. Can we still be practicing those principles? And I think this situation for me has amped that up exponentially. It's like meditation off the mat now. How are we going to be? Who are we going to be in response to not only our own fears that this situation brings up, and our own grief and anger and all of the feelings that the situation brings up, but we're also dealing with the collective, you know, panic, if you will, the collective pain, if you will. So to me, it's a profound opportunity to kind of activate in a really big way everything we've been talking about in all of our workshops for decades now. It's easy to do that in a workshop, but to do that in the face of something like this, that's why I said it's really like a boot camp. We need all of our muscles. We need all of our resources, all of our spiritual practices get to come online now in a really big way. One of my teachers, Adi Ashanti, has this saying where he kind of says, you know, the spiritual journey in one way can be summed up with the following statement, which is, are you really willing to meet life on life's terms? You know, and that sentence has stayed with me for a long time, and I've been thinking about it right now in terms of this pandemic. It's like life is life is showing us that we have pretty little control over what we want, right? Over our preferences. Our controls have, over the last couple of weeks, and you know, couple of weeks here in the United States, and I think also in Canada, where some of you are calling in from, our controls have been slowly taken away from us. Our preferences of how we want it to be, how we think it should be, this virus has kind of slammed in our face the great reality that we don't really have a lot of control. And that is incredibly frightening, I think, for us as humans, because we live under this illusion most of the time that we do have control. Seems like we do have control over things. And it's kind of this painful truth in a way. And you've heard this, I'm sure people have shared this, COVID-19 is kind of the great leveler. You know, it doesn't matter, you can't buy your way out of this. You can't spiritualize your way out of this. You are pushed to face this. We are pushed to face this. And I was thinking last night about, in a way, we have these biological natures in us that are wired to survive, right? We're, as a species, we're wired to survive. And with that comes this sense of, we need to plan, we need to be in control, we need to be in charge, we need to have a handle on things. And all of those coping mechanisms through this virus have been, in one sense, ripped away from us. We see just how little control we have. I'm not saying we have no control at all. We clearly can do things and make choices and follow the guidelines of the scientists, and we can wash our hands and we can practice social distancing. We can do all of those things, and we still don't have control ultimately over what happens. And so here we are faced with how insignificant our preferences about how life should be, our ideas about how life should be. You know, it's kind of like we're this little boat and the tsunami is coming, and you can see how little our boat is, my ideas of how I want life to be in the face of this great tsunami that doesn't care at all how Nilama wants life to be. There's an old Yiddish saying in the Jewish tradition, man tracht und Gott lacht, you know, meaning man plans, women plans, humans plan, and God laughs. Not that God is laughing right now, but it brings a little humor to the situation of like, we plan all these things out, we create this life, and then God comes in, or life comes in, if you want to see it that way. Life comes in and does what life does, which right now is this virus. So all of that to say, we have a profound opportunity right now to practice surrender, to practice some of these spiritual teachings we've been engaged with for so long, that we have the opportunity to accept, as my teacher says, accept life on life's terms right now. Now, that doesn't mean we still don't do the things we need to do to take care of our health. We do all of that externally, while at the same time internally, we practice saying yes to life right now. This is it. This is it right now. This is life. And the more I fight that, the more I resist that, the more I dig my heels in, the more I suffer. Right? So surrendering to life, in my view, is sort of aligning with life. It's saying, yeah, this is life right now. I have to stay at home. Yeah, this is life right now. It really sucks. I can't go to that family wedding. And honoring my feelings about that, honoring my grief about that. For some of us, honoring our fears about, we might get this virus. Someone we may know might get this virus. Someone may die. We may die. We can honor all of that fear that's there and still practice aligning with what's true right now, aligning with life. This is kind of an ironic thing, that when we can surrender to what is, even when what is scary and frightening and unknown, when we can surrender to this is what is, it's this irony that happens where all of a sudden we're in peace. Not the kind of peace that bypasses our pain or sadness, but the kind of peace that comes when we align with what is. This is what the Christians meant when they said, there's a peace that passes all understanding. You know, this is what Rumi meant when he said, out behind my ideas of right and wrong, there's a field. This is the field he's talking about, the field of surrender, the field of accepting that this is what is right now, and accepting all of my reactions to the fact of this is what is. When we can come into acceptance of that, this deeper level of peace, of compassion, of surrender is born in us. And the spiritual traditions, all of the different spiritual traditions of the planet have ways to help us practice surrender. And one of the ways that many of the traditions use as a practice is putting our physical body in some form of posture of surrender. There's something that happens when we're able to put our physical body, see, because our mind can't surrender. Our mind doesn't know how to surrender. Our mind only knows, our mind is like a thought producing factory that never stops working, even though it's not an essential service, it stays open all the time, our mind. So our mind isn't the part of us that surrenders. And the traditions knew this. All the different spiritual traditions on the planet knew this. And the way they dealt with that is they bypassed the mind and went right to the body. Put the physical body in some form of surrender posture, and the mind will quiet. So we're going to do that in a moment. We're going to do a little surrender practice where I'm going to invite you to find a posture of surrender. And I'll put on a piece of music, and we will just for a few minutes stay in that position. And as you do that posture, you will notice your mind will still do what it does, right? It will still do what it does. And the invitation is just whatever you notice coming up, see if you can practice energetically, physically, symbolically giving that over to something greater. Whether that's my fears that might arise, then I can practice just turning those over to God, if that's what that greater force is for you, turning those over to life. Just keep that practice of placing anything that comes up in me, any emotions, any thoughts, any worries, place them into the hands of something greater.